Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for this Reedsy Live book cover critique. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. I am a multimedia artist and a writer, and I love books more than just about anything in the world. And so last June, my family and I relocated from New York City to Portland, Oregon. And while in New York City, I was there for 15 years. I spent 14 years working for Penguin, which is now part of Penguin Random House. Now that I'm in New York, I get to really focus on my favorite part of book design, which is the covers and the interiors. And I especially love being able to help self-publishing authors put their work out there because I, from very personal experience, know how hard it is to get a book published by a major publisher. I self-published a book in 2014 called The Baker's Appendix, and didn't have any luck with my publishing contacts. Met someone in the food world who got me connected with a great agent, and in 2015, I want to say, Clarkson Potter bought The Baker's Appendix, and on March 21st of this year, we will celebrate the first anniversary of The Baker's Appendix. So I do understand what it's like to be a self-publishing author. As for what we're going to talk about, in the last few days, Reedsy has been receiving cover designs from authors like you from all over the world. They made a selection and sent them to me, and I am going to try to cover as many as I possibly can in the time frame that we have. But I will try to let you know what's working, what's not working, offer suggestions for improvement. I hope to get through at least 20 covers. If I don't get to yours, I hope that you still get something from this. Every cover is unique, but the principles of design are essentially the same, so pay attention and listen and take notes. So without further ado, let's get going. Jenny, I said hi to you earlier. The first cover we're going to discuss is Jenny's book, The Final Rose. From what I understand from what I received, it's an inspirational memoir. The first suggestion I have for you is perspective. Right now, the cover is black and white. It has a headshot-like appearance, and your face kind of takes up most of it. Consider color and consider pulling back a little bit so that we see more than just your face, and that there's also more room and breathing room for your text. Now, initially, my initial thought was, does this book have anything to do with The Bachelor, Bachelorette? I think it's part of our pop culture now because of The Bachelor and Bachelorette. We think of The Final Rose and we think of that show. So if it does, okay, but you might want to indicate that in your subtitle. If it doesn't, I would really rethink using rose imagery and possibly even rethink your title because it's just too ingrained in our culture now. So I said consider a color photo. Black and white is classic, but it's Q's headshot, and pull back a little bit. Give yourself breathing room for your text. I also wanted to point out, and this is something that others might get something from, a subtitle is almost always done in title case, which means that each new letter has a capitalization, even if, except for A, to, certain words like that. Google title case, and you can get more information about that, but subtitles should pretty much always have a title case or all caps, depending on the design. I'm going to keep moving so we can get as many as we can. The next I have a children's picture book. This is The Most Extraordinary Ordinary Day. Now this is pretty close to being ready to go. The two suggestions that I have are to increase the leading between Most Extraordinary and Ordinary Day just a little bit so you have breathing room. And you'll see here that they have done everything's in the same font. I'd avoid everything in the same font. I would do art by and written by in a sans serif or just a very different font so that you can set it off just a little bit. It gets confusing for some people, overwhelming. They don't know where their eyes should go if everything is in the same font. Now we've got some YA titles. First is Falling into Fear. This was listed in the notes I received as children's literature, though given the synopsis, I'm pretty sure it's not really a children's novel. It seems more YA. This is a good example of one of the rules of design in that don't want to do so many fonts. There's 4 different fonts happening right here on this cover, and that's way too many fonts for one cover. I aim to do 2 at most, sometimes 3 if the cover calls for it, but I try for just 2 fonts. And here we've got 4. So the first suggestion I would have for you, Anne, is to reduce your fonts. Now, also regarding your imagery, the synopsis of the book indicates that it has to do with time travel. It's sort of a thriller with some time travel, from what I can tell. As I mean, there's the clock element, but sort of I get a running feel from this more than I do a time travel. So we might want to consider some more starker imagery, watch, something historic, you know, a little bit cleaner. Also, avoid all red, especially for YA. It is a very dramatic color. I think it could possibly skew a little scary, honestly, for your intended audience. So again, also author name. Author names, for the most part, should be not the smallest thing on the page necessarily, but a smaller aspect of your page, because you want the first impression the reader has to either be your imagery or a bold title. Second thing they're going to look at is the author. So right now we've got an author that's kind of covering the whole bottom, which is something I see all the time. It's not anything you're doing wrong. It's just a lot of people don't understand the author name should be smaller. Anyway, so no, not 4 fonts. Try to stick to 2 fonts. And be very conscious of your imagery. Look at the books that you think are like your book, and if your book doesn't look anything like those, consider taking it a different direction. Another YA title we have is How to Spell a Secret. This is also where did my notes go for that? Another YA title, and it's the suggestions that I have for you, AJ. I read in the synopsis that there's a sort of a music aspect to this. I would think that maybe bringing that in somehow could be helpful. I'm also concerned with the font. You know, you have 3 fonts here. That can be okay because, you know, it's a YA book, so sometimes with YA books it's good to have handwriting. You know, it can connect a young person on the cover. But the font down here is almost a little too dirty, for lack of a better word, from the synopsis that I gathered from your book. I would consider, first of all, author name smaller. Second of all, rethink this type. Not that you can't have a display font. And display fonts, for those who don't understand what that is, are the sort of decorative, more decorative fonts that people use on book covers. Those are called display fonts. And they can be really great. You just have to be really careful with how you use them because they definitely have tones to them. So yeah, I would consider bringing in a musical element to this. I'm not saying it needs to have music notes flying everywhere, but you know, do a little further image searches maybe on iStock or Shutterstock and see what you can find that gives a better idea of what the book is talking about. Music, and it sounds like there's grit, there's place, you know, there's Melbourne, I believe was mentioned. So that would be my suggestion for this. This is, you kind of can't, I don't really know what this book is about by looking at the cover. I mean, I know it's about swimming. That's very obvious. It's about swimming. But from the synopsis of this, it is sort of a tense YA, but a family read sort of book. My suggestion for this would be go onto iStock. I did an image search. Look for young girls swimming. It's again a perspective where instead of having this face and then the water, it's a woman, it's a young girl swimming in the water, like taken from top down. So you sort of see the perspective of her. You can have her sort of in the center. You've got your water. Then you can have your title. Title smaller. And author name smaller, and then subtitle. I would think of a different font for the subtitle. Again, we have 3 fonts happening on here. With something this decorative, this is, the S makes it a decorative font, the script part of it. So with something this decorative, I would try for a cleaner sans serif perhaps for that. But again, think about your imagery, think about breathing room for your customer's eyes, and think about what you want them to see first when they look at your cover. The Good Goblin. This involves illustration, which is lovely and great. This is a good example of something very simple. Really, the comments that I have about this are, I would make the author name a little bit smaller. I would consider the title and the author in a color that's, you can do that kind of a brighten it, almost like a, not necessarily white, but white with a little bit of cyan, a little bit of blue added to it, but not so much that it sort of blends in. It doesn't really stand out to me. Also, I think it's really clever that the font, the title is next to the roof here. My suggestion would be to move it, though, a little bit to the right. If you have to make the Good and Goblin a little smaller in order to center Goblin, because right now it's visually centered on the cover, I think that would be fine. I think you're almost there. Keep that stacking, but just kind of, it's a little close to the roof, and it's a little washed out. The whole cover kind of blends together. So think about a way that you can make the type brighter and stand out more. We have a mystery thriller now, Death in the Devil's Range. This is a good example of, you can use 2 serif fonts. Serif fonts are those that have the sort of ends like a Times New Roman or a Garamond or something, as opposed to a Futura that's very straight. This is it's a mystery thriller, though it doesn't really read mystery thriller when you look at it. I know that from what I understand in the synopsis, the dog is also kind of an important part of the story. Now, the thing with this cover is it's washed out a bit. The dog sort of looks like it was plopped on, and the author type is very flourishy, whereas a mystery thriller, you don't want flourish necessarily. You don't want these swoops. I would go for a sans serif type for the author name. I would consider looking for a different image, maybe search stock images for a dog already on a ranch that is deeper in color with deeper shades, blacks, siennas, deep blues, deep greens, anything that's sort of, if you have a thriller, you want it dark. Like that's just, you want someone to immediately get the impression that there's tension in this book. So I would go that direction, sans serifing the author name, finding different imagery that doesn't, where the dog is sort of a little more seamless and a little less illustrative, stronger, brighter colors. All right, next we have women's fiction. This is A Song for Jessica. This is another example of where I think perspective could help a lot. Great to have a woman singing on the cover. That is what the book is about in some ways. But I would look for another image that pulls back and lets the viewer see more than just the mouth and the microphone. I also recommend never putting your title above a transparent banner. That can get presentation-y in a way. It sort of looks presentation-y. And considering that this is women's fiction, here's a good example of where you do want a serif font. You do want something that has warmth to it and a little more, just reads a little warmer, a little more inviting. Whereas this sans serif here is quite heavy, instructional almost. So yeah, I would recommend finding an image that pulls out, lets us see more of the woman. Find a sans or serif font to use for your title. You can keep this in sans serif, but I would recommend not having it above a transparent banner as well. I would put it perhaps, move it down. You could have it in white as well. If you have your image pulled back, maybe you can have your title in a color because there's space for that. So again, think about perspective. Think about who your audience is. If this is women's fiction, then you want something not delicate. I don't want to think delicate, but just softer. Okay. Here we have fiction, women's fiction. I'm not quite sure. My notes that I got were a little different. This is Secrets in Oak Creek. First two things with this. One, it's washed out. So imagery, unless you're purposely going for, like, I don't know, a ghost not a ghost story, but avoid washed out. Try to get your colors bright and sharp, and then be wary with outer edge glows, and drop shadows. Used correctly, they should kind of really not be noticeable. They're used to emphasize the text itself and not really be a part of the text. So you want to judiciously use both outer glow and drop shadow. And right now, you're also lacking color. It's sort of washed out all over because the title's in brown. And so yeah, my recommendations for this would be to author name smaller, get rid of your outer glow here, unless it's just very faint. Like, you can drop your opacity and still use an outer glow and have it work. I would put this in a color, and make sure that I would have secrets be the same font size as Oak Creek, and in be a little smaller, because you want to emphasize secrets. Oak Creek in is sort of, it's part of the title, but it's not necessarily the most important part of the title. Okay, this is a contemporary LGBT romance, Mom's Secret Lover. This is an example of a cover that's using all the same font. Don't do that. It's a series, because we have it indicated on here that it's a series. The first thing you want to do is, if you're creating a series, you want to brand your series line. So, perhaps all caps, nothing with outline. I would do a sans serif, all caps. Perhaps you can put it in a band, like a black band, or even a rainbow band with white type over it. And then I would avoid the sort of, nothing's Comic Sans, but I would avoid sort of the balloony kind of type. I don't know how to describe it, but because you can't tell, is this book for YA? Is it for an older audience? Clean the type up a little bit. Sans serif, again, I think would work just fine for your title. Or serif, I'm sorry, would work just fine for your title. I would also, if this is part of the branding of the series, I would consider moving it with the series line, or even within the line, since I would make this all smaller. Keep the branding all together. And then once you have this moved up, and this kind of, you change your type, you move it down a little bit, because right now you're kind of blocking the woman's mouth. So like the composition is a little off. That's what I have to say about that. Okay. Next, paranormal romance. Yes. Red Dirt Road. Okay. Paranormal romance is, huge. It's a genre that's exploded in the last 12 years, 14 years. I can remember being at Penguin when it really started to take off, and working on like the old Laurel K. Hamiltons and all that sort of stuff, and the book industry trying to understand paranormal romance is a really popular genre, which now, of course, it is. It's huge. That said, there's some rules that go along with paranormal romance, and you'll notice this, I think, if you look online or go to your bookstore and look at the paranormal romance covers. There's gonna be a person. Almost always there's a person, and it's probably an exceptionally attractive person, or a mixed person, person hybrid. There's going to be black. There's going to be sharp pink. There's going to be, bright blue. It's going to sort of, it's like city, you kind of feel like you're on edge a little bit looking at it, and there's somebody really attractive, and something's going on, and there's some glowing maybe. This paranormal romance does have a Western element to it. So I don't think that it's a wrong thing to have a cowboy on a horse on there. What I would recommend doing is looking for a different image that sort of follow those guidelines of being striking, dark, even a guy would, show his face. Some hot guy on a horse, hot cowboy. Avoid banding. Again, that stuff works really well for some sort of serious fiction, sometimes serious nonfiction. Paranormal romance, I wouldn't suggest it at all. I would have it be solid image, and then I would work on your type. Now, the font that's currently used is very either like cozy mystery or soft romance. You know, you have a heart, you have curly. This is not paranormal romance font. Again, look for something with sharp angles, a serif or a sans serif, but something that's got sharpness and tension to it when you look at the font. I mean, the sans serif or the serif you're using for the author name is just fine. But again, think about your color palette, think about your imagery, and think about your font. And when in doubt, don't copy the books that you like or that you want to emulate, but learn from them and take pieces of advice from what they're doing and what they're doing right. Because your audience is used to that. Your audience buys that, and you want your audience to immediately connect to your book, so you might as well have it fit within the genre itself. And that goes for any book. It doesn't matter what, paranormal, fiction, nonfiction, make sure that you really think about not just what you like and what you think looks good, but your reader, because the reader's the one buying the book. You're not the one buying the book unless you're like me and you buy like 50 copies to give to like your mom, which is totally fine. Okay, moving on, nonfiction. And we have here this title. Now, mouthful of a title. Hurting hearts need only a spark to set them ablaze. Ellipses, everyone needs a refuge. Now, this book is, from what I can gather, sort of more inspirational, a helpful book, not necessarily self-help, but I think it's, from what I gather, it's meant to, be shared and read and learned from, and it's her story, Debbie's story, sorry, but also, a story that she wants to have other women relate to. Okay, first suggestion, title's way too long. Way too long. And here I have to look at my notes. My suggestion, I have two suggestions. One, it's a nonfiction. So you want striking imagery that reads to what you're talking about. Right now it sort of looks like it's, happy tea party, or, it just, I don't feel reading the synopsis that it works to give the message that you might want to be given. My suggestion would be all white cover, a heart sparks, and then working with a new title, something along the lines of Spark a Hurting Heart, subtitle, Inspiration, Hope, and Encouragement to Help You Live an Abundant Life. But really condense what you have to say. Your title should probably not be more than 4 words. I mean, there's some people that can get away with it, but those people are, frankly, famous or well-connected, or somehow got like an insane 6-figure advance from a publishing company, and so they can do whatever they want. Generally speaking, keep your title concise and condensed. Subtitle a little bit longer, but you want your subtitle to reflect what they're going to get inside of your book. So you need to be clear. And then the other thing is you have all the same font going. Again, don't do that. Try for at least 2. You can have a nice serif for your title, no problem. And then you can even have, a serif for your author name or your subtitle, but try to break up the text a little bit and don't use just one font. I hope that all made sense. Okay, here we have another nonfiction, She Too. This is another thing where I have a few comments related to the layout, and I also have a comment related to how the book is presented through its title and subtitle. As for the layout, I would just move over She Too, there we go. I would move She Too over a little bit because it's running into her hair. You kind of don't want it to look like a mistake of placement. Everything doesn't have to be centered. It can be purposefully off-centered. So I would move sheet 2 over towards there, to the right. And then here, the subtitle and the author name are so small, no one's ever going to see that, and think that a lot of people are going to be looking at your book on Amazon or online, and it's going to be, you know, like an inch tall, an inch and a half tall. So not that they have to be able to read everything that's on your cover, but you don't want them to not even know it's there. So subtitle and author name, taller. Now I just have a question. Is there supposed to be a comma after she? Is it she too? Because that just reads better to me, but that's just a suggestion. The other suggestion I have after reading your synopses is to consider a new subtitle. Right now you have an important story based on events IRL. That doesn't tell anyone what this important story is, you know, nor does the title really. Not everybody's going to turn to the back of the book to read what it's about. And if it's an ebook, not everybody's going to scroll down to read what it's about. So you should always try to give as much information about what your book is about on the cover as smartly as possible, using a combination of imagery, title, and subtitle without overwhelming. It sounds very hard, and it's a juggling act. Like, it takes practice, and it can be confusing. But I promise, if you just, you know, give yourself time. Your cover doesn't have to be an immediate thing. Give yourself time. A lot of people jump to do their covers before their book is even like laid out. You have time on your cover. Give yourself time to really learn what your book is about and learn how it might best be represented. My suggestion for your subtitle of sheet 2 is something along the lines of, you know, a book to help families navigate the darker sides of the college experience. Because I gathered from your description synopsis, it has to do with the things that happen in college that, you know, we don't necessarily talk about or consider for young people. So I would consider trying to put that in your subtitle, pardon me, for clarification for your reader. Metal. Nice job on imagery. It's creepy, it's contrasted, it's a little unnerving, to be frank, and that's what you want. Here's my suggestions. Number 1, up top you have a psychological thriller, intimate and unfathomable. Strike intimate and unfathomable. All psychological thrillers are intimate and unfathomable. Unfathomable. That's what makes them a psychological thriller. Not that what makes them, but most psychological thrillers have a sense of intimacy, and then there's like, what the hell just happened there? Unfathomableness. So I would strike that. I would consider bumping your title up just a little bit. Take a psychological thriller, make it smaller, put it underneath the title, Metal, a psychological thriller, so it reads sort of smoothly. Part 1, a little bit smaller, all caps. Can pretty much stay where it is. Author name's fine. So really, it's more about reordering of the text a little bit and getting rid of text that just is not really lending anything to your jacket. Another fiction. This one's pretty fun because it's all illustrative, quirky, kind of doodly business happening. This is The Branch Office, as I understand it. The is missing. Brooke Winters, if you want make sure it's there. Very important. Really, I think this is really close to being there. It's great. It's the one really suggestion I have is that you need a third color. I don't know if it's the background of The Branch Office so that the title really stands out. Right now it's all, where does the eye go first? You know, it's all 2 colors. It's quirky and fun, but where you need to catch, you have like 3 seconds to get them to actually pick up your book or look more into your book. So add a third color. It's up to you what color you want it to be. The immediate thing that popped in my head was white for the speech bubbles. Plus, white for speech bubbles is pretty de rigueur, you know, you see it in all kinds of things. So white or a light cream, something with a tinge of yellow, so you're sort of keeping that feel and that warmth. But other than that, I think you got a good thing going. It's pretty cool. Another fiction, right? Writer's block, which I thought was nonfiction at first, but is fiction, and it sounds like it's sort of almost perhaps a creepier fiction, because the subtitle is "It's Not Just a Phase." True. Writer's block is not just a phase. If you're a writer, you'll know it's kind of your whole life. Every other day, right? So, suggestions for this. Again, kind of washed out. Definitely put the title in a color, because you have this black against the gray black background, and so nothing's really standing out. I would love to see some vividness in the ocean, you know, kind of strike up that saturation, roiling water, you know, give it sort of a, not Jaws, you're not gonna have a shark coming out, but kind of a tension, God, I've used that word a lot, right? A tension that you're creating, and color here. I'd make your "It's Not Just a Phase" longer, or bigger, sorry, a little bit bigger, in order to not have it get lost. You know, when it's quite a bit smaller than the author name. Also, here's something. A lot of people put "by" on their covers, or "a novel by." It's not necessary. They know who it's by. Like, your reader is going to look at it and be like, okay, that's who it's by. So for the most part, I'd recommend not putting it there. It's just, you don't need it. Your name should stand alone. You are the writer. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating this work. Put your name out there and be proud. Don't put "by." Okay, on to something very different, which is a design book, which is really fun to see. This is a lovely cover. It's very close. Couple suggestions that I have are to move the block of type with the title up just a little bit, and I would make it like the really pale part of the blue over here. I mean, you don't want it to get washed out and lost in the decorative bit here, in the yellow, but you need a bit of color for the title. It might not be the blue. I would experiment. You know, you can experiment with pink or purple or something like that. I don't know if you want to skew too feminine though, but definitely bring color into the title. I would also kind of decorative element, a line, double line, a type embellishment between the title and the subtitle, just because that adds another minor decorative element. Also, be proud. Pump up the names. Make author name, make photographer name bigger. I mean, I think keeping the balance is good. Author name should be larger in this instance, but bold. You know, you could consider a bolder weight of the font that you're using, or as well as larger. But you know, a bit bigger. Don't go crazy, but a bit bigger. And then you're there. This looks like a great book. Nonfiction. Mentor Me. It's a good book for all of us, right? Advice for aspiring writers. And if you're like me, you own way too many books about how to be a writer, because I don't know. I think it's going to like osmosisly make you more successful. Nonfiction, prescriptive nonfiction, which is what this is called. Nonfiction that gives you advice. Simple, you want to keep it simple. This is a very sort of notebooky, instructive kind of look to it. I would recommend, what I have on my notes here. Nonfiction titles, they work well with a simple, strong image. Same as the hurting, sparkling heart that I talked about. So I would consider maybe an all-white or single color background and find an image of a pencil with some shavings, or a pen, or a laptop, or, I mean, there are covers out there already that have a typewriter on them, so maybe avoid a typewriter, but typewriters are cool. So maybe you want a typewriter on there, it's your book. Get rid of your lines. Much smaller subtitle, smaller editor line. Title, this is what I'm talking about with leading. See how close they are right there? I would increase your leading. I would consider making it smaller and then all caps, and then not italicizing me. You bump it up, you know, maybe consider a condensed weight of this font. So you bump it up, condensed, what is it? Trade Gothic condensed bold is a lovely font. You know, Futura is nice, though this might not really be Futura. I might look into Trade Gothic condensed. All caps at the top, white, some kind of writerly thing right there, and then, you know, subtitle, 2 lines is fine. Just make it smaller and make this a little bit smaller, and I think you're golden. Sounds like a nice book. Actually, these all sound like nice books. Congratulations. Next, we have a Western. War in the West. Okay, this is nearly there. Issue that I have is that it looks like it reads War West. It takes a minute for the eyes to see War in the West. So what I would recommend, and I really think this is clever, putting it on the fencing like that. That's pretty cool. I would move the fencing just a little bit to the left. I would move west a little bit to the right. They don't need to be quite so stacked. And then I would not stack in the. I would put them on one line. So you're forcing the eye to kind of read as we naturally read, left to right, or as we in the, you know, European read left to right. So just it's just sort of some adjustment, but I think you're nearly there. This is what I'm going to talk about. It's bold, you've got strong colors, you've got strong type. This is a good use of the decorative type I was talking about. You know, because it's on fencing, you kind of get that barbed wire quality to it, and it works. It works for this. Just you know, some minor adjustments. Oh, and here's another. When I said don't put by, also don't put a novel by. If you want to include a novel, which sometimes it's a good idea to do, put it really small under your title. Bump this up a bit, small under your title, and then at the bottom, author name, bigger. Not too big, but bigger. And then I think you're good. Okay. I'm a big food person, like huge, crazy, especially baking. I'm a cake historian, which is super weird, I know, but I love cake way too much. So it's exciting, food book. This is, from what I understand, the first in a new series of books coming out of the UK. I believe the series is called The Enlightened Foodie or Enlightened Foodie, and it's a smaller trim, A6 in the UK, which breaks down to about 4 inches by 5 inches here in the US. And the crown doesn't work. Foodie books, especially if you want it to be a series and it sort of has a travel element to it, where from what I understand, each book is going to be a different borough in London and the food that's there, which is awesome. And I love London, and that would be very helpful whenever I can afford to get back there. So the type is way too like 1980s computery. Brand your series look as far as your type. Enlightened Foodie, with the subtitle line below, inspiring food stories from London. So Enlightened Foodies, inspiring stories from London. Book number 1, Ealing. Imagery. Now I presented this, but then in the synopsis it said that it was going to be an image of the borough and each book will be a different color. My suggestion would be an image from the borough, just an image from the borough, and maybe either your spine is each in a different color so that when people put the books on their shelves, the different spine colors kind of can be another indicator of where the book is taking place. Otherwise, I would stick with imagery. Food world, just, you need pictures, you need imagery. You need imagery either of food or a really awesome restaurant, signage, something like that. But I think the idea of having this, you know, brand it to the neighborhood, and then, so start with branding your series, and then brand the neighborhood the book is about, and keep it imagery here, maybe color the spine, change the color of your type for your series notes, whatever. But that would be my suggestion about that, and I hope that made sense. Oh, I think I'm running out of time. How about I'll do one more. Oh, and I have 2 more in my stack, so maybe I can do real fast. This is close. Death in the Night Riviera. Suggestion: darken the background here so that this shows up more. brighten it, make it white, and then the background of your image, darken it so that you can see it more. Also make this line a little bit smaller. Also, don't trust your computer to center everything for you. Visually center. Look at it. Does it look centered? Trust your eyes. If it doesn't look centered, ignore your computer's centering and fix it. Because right now, it's technically centered, but night's over a little, you know, so visually center. All right, lovely. Last but not least that I can get to today, boot camp killer. 2 suggestions. This line, solid color, no outline, smaller, keep all caps. Move your imagery up just a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch, so that you're about 1/8 of an inch up here below the author name. Tighten the kerning, 1 or 2 points for that. And then you have a little bit more space, because right now you're getting kind of weighed down with the boat and the title and the subtitle. So subtitle, smaller, solid color, all caps. Move that up a little bit. I hope that made sense. That's all I have time for today. Everybody have a great day. I hope that you got something out of this. I'm really sorry if I didn't get to your cover. Some of the covers just didn't need any help, frankly. Some of them I figured it would take a little longer for me to talk about. So I hope everybody has a good day wherever you are in the world, and keep writing, and know that your book is worth it. And every book has an audience, and more, you know, long live the writers and the book creators of the world. And thank you to Reedsy for inviting me to do this. I hope you have a good day.